Welcome to sunny Winter Haven, Florida. I'm Lane Dawg Bowers, and I want you to realize that you are greatly blessed, highly favored, and deeply loved. And I'm pretty pumped about what I'm going to talk to you about today, because if you can remember, worry, or tie your shoes, then I've got some good news for you, because that's the same skill set that you can use, that God gave you, to accomplish anything that you focus your mind on, and also to make a lot of money at home or on the internet. Now you're saying, like, whoa, what does that have to do with, making money on the internet or succeeding or having good success, which is what I like to talk about. And here's what I learned from psycho-cybernetics, which I'm such a huge fan, and I'm always going to tie it back to the best source of wisdom. But here's the thing: if you can remember, worry, or tie your shoes, you can basically do anything. So what does that mean? I love that, because that just brought me to like a standstill in my tracks when I first read that, and it got me motivated. So I'm going to talk to you about one of those, the power of worrying. Now I'm calling it the power of worrying, but if you can worry, you can accomplish any worthy dream. Now, how is that possible? First, let's analyze worry, because I think there's not a human being on earth, and if you're anything like me, you've worried before. But what is worry? Worry is focused attention on a result that you do not want, and then using the power, really tapping into the power of your imagination to make those unreal events that you worry about, you're bringing them to life. But you're doing it by thinking about them. What would happen if, for instance, you could worry, hey, what happens if I don't make enough money? What happens if I go broke? What happens if my wife leaves me? If my kids, hate me? What happens? And then you take one of those, and people are, you naturally have this built into you, where if you let your imagination run with it, then your imagination picks one of those things, like what happens if I run out of money and I get broke, I can't pay my mortgage, I lose my home, and all this. Now, and then you start thinking about the more specific details of, and I don't even want to go into it, because I don't want to feed your mind with negative thoughts. But if you can worry, you can take that same God-given talent of focused attention on a clearly defined goal, and in the case of worrying, it's a clearly defined bad goal, something you do not want to happen, but yet you're focused on it, you're thinking about it, and your imagination run amok in a bad environment is now bringing to life some of the things that you do not want to happen, and vividly imagining the scenarios in which that could happen and what that would look like. Switch that, and what happened if you worried that maybe you would start making money online? What happens if you do start making money online? What happens if you get a mentor and you end up spending 2 or 3 hours a day learning and listening and building a business online that ends up being too successful? What happens if all of a sudden now you got to have an accountant? What happens if your accountant calls you at the end of the year and, oh man, you need to go out and buy a couple of vehicles, or you have to go purchase a rental home or something like that? What if those things happen? If you were to vividly imagine, use your imagination after you've defined a clear goal, and then allow your imagination to work on it, or your creative mechanism, as they call it, or your servo mechanism is another way they say it. That's something, an ability God gave you if you focus your attention on something good. And I love to bring this back to the greatest wisdom, because if it's good to focus on something that's good to get a good result, then why not focus on something great? Why not focus on something? And that is the power of God's Word in your life as well. Imagine, and that's why in Proverbs it tells you to focus daily, morning and night. This doesn't mean you have to have a Bible study, nonstop and pray without ceasing. You know what I mean? This just means, think about it, focus on it. Take a simple verse that you've learned and repeat it yourself. Remind yourself, focus on that. Because it is amazing to me the power of focused attention and then letting your imagination run with it. So my challenge is to you is I want you to set some clearly defined goals, and I want to have a whole different segment on how to do that. But I want you to think, because if your goal is to make, say, 1,500 extra bucks a month, or 5,000, or 10,000, or even 15,000, or 20,000, or 100,000, whatever it is, what's funny is your brain does not really get to latch on and use creative imagination and how you're going to achieve that goal. Why? Because it's not really the money that you want. That's why in God's Word we talk about getting good success when we focus on God's Word, God's wisdom, Jesus' first place in our lives, to get good success by focusing on the right things. There's many things you can focus on, but there's probably only one that you should focus on every day, in the morning and at night, just so you do not become distracted and focused. I mean, try it. Even if you're not a believer, even if you don't believe me, try worrying about a positive outcome and see how that makes you feel. Because to me, that's amazing. I think that's unbelievable. So one thing that'll really help you is with your goals, and I'm sorry, man, it's like a storm must be blowing. It is cranking out here. We got a storm coming, so I better wrap this up. I want you to get a clearly defined goal. It's not the money that you want. You're saying, yes, Lane, it is the money. Listen, what will you do with that money? Do you want enough money to retire your wife, bring her home into your family? Do you want enough money to be able to stay at home with your kids? Start thinking through, what would your life be like if you achieved that financial goal? Then I want you to go do a Google search, get some images that best describe that environment that you want, and put those images and words together. Maybe even get some motivational quotes. Better yet, go to God's Word and pull out a verse that means something to you, and then start worrying daily. Start motivating. Start turning your attention to the good, the clean, the pure, the powerful, and the positive. What happens if I become the world's best dad? What happens if I become the world's best husband? Oh no, what if my wife loves me too much? What if my kids think I've hung the moon? I mean, that's a whole different type of worrying. What happens, if I make $30,000 a day and $1 million a month? Oh, what would I do? How many, what happens if I help too many people realize they're greatly blessed, highly favored, deeply loved? Get a clearly defined goal. Get some images, get some pictures. Go past the money and find out the reason. When you find your why, something that really motivates you, then turn your imagination, your creative mechanism, your servo mechanism, turn it loose and let it start worrying about the good outcome if those things happen. I'm excited for you. I am expecting a miracle for you. Have a great day and expect a miracle.